Hi everyone, welcome back to the Milan Podcast. It's me, Devapam, along with Rajat and Sam, back with our second edition of Milan Podcast. Phenomenal the way that you have reached out to us and your comments, your advice that we have received from the first episode, and we'll try and put them into action as we go forward. In our first episode, we had kind of dealt with the Milan transfer season, and each transfer had been rated. Fortunately or unfortunately, as we record this second piece, there has been no further significant transfer that has happened on the Milan front, unless you consider Junior Messias. By the way, guys, I don't know if you saw that. Genoa put together a Junior Messias photo. Um, as Jesus Christ superstar from Sao Paulo. I mean, today we have a packed set of agenda. The first case we'll go out to looking forward to what exactly this transfer season still needs for it to be 100% successful. And there are a lot of deals that are getting done as we speak. This portion is basically what more needs to happen in the transfer season. So far that we have seen, Milan has been very active in terms of both offloading some of the extra members as well as onboarding a very exciting set of talents. There is still a lot of dead wood that the team needs to get rid of. Fode Balotore, he has been the deputy for Theo for last 2 years. I think everyone understands that he's not at Milan level. I still do not know why he has not moved on. Fulham wanted him, Werder Bremen wanted him, but as of now, that transfer has not yet happened. Rade Krunic, one of the poster boys of Pioli era, he wants to go to Turkey, to Fenerbahce for a 4-year deal. He wants to play with Dzeko. So far, so good. But Fenerbahce are not cuffing up the amount that Milan wants. Milan wanted initially 12 to 14 million. Fenerbahce bid 5 billion, which was a joke. Now they have bid 7 billion. I think Milan will let it go if it comes up to 9 to 10 billion. The other guy that needs to really move out is Mattia Caldara. I don't know why he's still here. Mattia Caldara has no future in Milan. Other guy that needs to move out is Colombo. That's for his own good. I think Colombo is one of the best upcoming Italian strikers, and he needs to play on a regular basis to really cement his position as that. And finally, the last guy is basically a joker in the pack is Alexis Saelemaekers. Came as a right back, then played as a right winger. He has now played, I think, every position except for the goalkeeper. And I think it is time that we let Alexis go. So these are the 5 people that I feel needs to move out. People that need to come in, we'll discuss that shortly. But positions that they need to come in are centre back, especially now that Gabbia has gone out. Deputy Theo role, now that Fode Balotore will go out, hopefully. A striker to rotate with Giroud, because obviously Noah Okafor is Rebic sub. He will rotate with Liao and a CDM, defensive midfielder who can operate from the base of the midfield. Sam, what do you think about these 4 positions, and who do you think can come in to better the squad?
I think the possibility of heading into a full Serie A season relying on really only Olivier Giroud as a starting striker option, a real number 9 option, is bordering on neglect from a sporting standpoint. I think if we come into the idea that Okafor is the Rebic replacement that's going to play wider, as well as recovering from injury and have to be rehabilitated into the squad. Obviously, we know that a lot of the other players, such as Liao, on straight up strikers. I think there's a massive case to be made, as has been for about 18 months, that Milan need another striker up front. If Giroud gets a knock, which at 37, 38 is not just acceptable, it's perfectly understandable and should be expected. The idea that no one in behind can either develop behind him, rotate alongside him, give Milan kind of some tactical versatility with playing two up front, or maybe change the system as the case may be. I think that's where we need to go. I think we had a conversation off air before we started. If you look at the rumours, Milan appear to be trying to just shop at either Chelsea's training ground or Football Manager for like a 19, 20, 21-year-old kid. And I'm sick of having to Google players and be like, oh, we scored 3 goals in 27 games. Sounds terrific. Can't wait for that to work out in one of the 4th or 3rd toughest league on the planet. And the only other option appears to be just old names of those gone around the Serie A merry-go-round, like Alvaro Morata, who Juventus fans absolutely despised when he was playing for Juventus because he couldn't finish his tea when it really mattered. So for me, I don't know. The problem is as well, going in, there's no real clear understanding of how much money Milan have to spend or are willing to spend at this portion of the transfer window. Do they have 15 million? Do they have 25? We don't really know. But personally, for me, I wouldn't mind just somebody who I've seen played in Serie A, can perform and isn't 37 years of age would be phenomenal for me. So I was having a look. Is there I'm just going to suggest a few names and feel free to shout me down. Because I don't really want Alvaro Morata. I think signing Lukaku is an interesting idea, but I'm not entirely sure it's realistic. I'm not convinced that 1 goal in 12 games for Chelsea for Broha is an indicator that he's actually going to perform. So, Atalanta's striker Lookman, 13 goals, 8 assists for Atalanta last season. He's 25. Scamacca's just arrived for 30 million. In theory, that could be a realistic purchase that we could at least start negotiating with. Beto, 25, plays for Udinese, double figures in back-to-back seasons for Udinese. Doesn't have to lead the line necessarily, doesn't have to play 35 to 40 games a season, but at the very least, he's a Serie A proven scorer. If you want to get a little bit weird, we could maybe talk to Wolves about Fabio Silva, a player who they brought in for 35 million 2 or 3 years ago, and he clearly shows promise. But because of obviously it's a local side for me, so I know of the chaos that surrounded Fabio Silva's career. He came on for 20 minutes against Manchester United at the weekend, looked really good, looked really bright, but he appears to be coming off the bench and there's some chaos there as well. So maybe that'll be an interesting one. In terms of like interesting shots, maybe we could go for the Premier League. Could we go for someone like Odsonne Edouard, who came off and scored for Palace that weekend just gone? Could we see if Spurs maybe would entertain an offer for Richarlison and get him because they get a chance of seeing him after one of maybe the worst 12-month periods of time in any Spurs striker, including Harry Kane's departure. I don't think we have the budget to hijack Florian Balogun. I certainly don't think we have the money to get Jonathan David from Lille, although those would be my dream signings. But somebody who I've seen play, who scored 10 to 15 goals in a top league, who isn't over 35 years old, who also isn't 19, and looks like he needs somebody to drive him to work, would at least be the starting spot point for me to really improve the side. Because if you can say what you like about Okafor, and I know he's talented, but if Giroud gets injured in match day 2, we are legitimately in real trouble. Terrifying that on the 16th or the 15th of August, it appeared to be that Milan were like, oh yeah, where's the second striker? Where have you been for a month? Actually, no, where have you been for 6.5 months? Where have you been for 12.5 months? It's like, absolutely, it's absurd to me. Honestly, it's absurd to me, because if I was in the Milan board, I'd be pointing at the striker position, throwing darts at it. What are we doing about this? Why haven't we fixed this? It's very frustrating to have known the issue exists, and it just appears to have woken out of a drunken stupor. So striker are my top 3 priorities for Milan for the remainder of the summer.
At least we are not that desperate that we are paying 10 million for a 34-year-old player who had been bought by his current club for even lesser amount. Like, we're not that desperate, right, Sam? So
give me a week or so, buddy, and I will be calling for Arnautovic as well. I'll be like, is Pippo Inzaghi still in shape?
Trust me, if Pippo comes back to play, he'll still manage at least 5 to 6 goals. Even, I mean, look, we all saw what Seedorf did, right? So
offside rule is very Pippo Inzaghi friendly. With that new offside rule where he can essentially just have his fingertip next to the guy and be like a yard and a half in front, Pippo would score 40 goals a season in his prime right now. I'm calling it, man.
yeah, before we go to Rajat, I'll just put two more names into that mix. Hugo Ekitike, last year moved to PSG, which is basically a circus pack. Last year, he had a shocking season. He scored 3 or 4 goals. Hugo Ekitike has been told that he has no place in PSG team. He is looking for a club. Joao Felix has terminated his contract with Atletico Madrid. I don't think Joao Felix is a striker per se, but then is coming for free. The third guy whom I think is pretty promising is Benjamin Sesko at RB Leipzig. Leipzig bought Openda. They have a few other strikers in front of him. So I think Sesko might choose to go out on a loan.
Well, I think we're touching on two very different sides of the pitch. I think Sam has very eloquently explained the need for a striker. And I suppose the management sees Giroud's 11 goals in the Scudetto winning season and 13 goals last season as a positive trajectory. Does Giroud now cross the 15 goal mark? Is he now going to be one of the most lethal strikers in Serie A? Of course, I mean, all jokes aside, that's not going to happen. We've seen how immobile he is. But moving a little deeper into back of the pitch, which is the defense, we saw all kinds of problems last season. We saw how chaotic Chelsea as a club, as a team were, and they schooled Milan over 2 legs. Mason Mount ran rings around Tomori. The slide off for Tomori from the Scudetto winning season to last season was very steep. And there are a lot of reasons which can be attributed to that. And I think very conveniently, Pioli becomes the well-rounded punching bag for people to go after. But there have been squad-related concerns which have led to even Tomori's, sort of regression as a defender. But Tomori is a very aggressive, modern centre-back, where he just pushes high up the pitch, pushes attackers further away from the penalty box and tries to win the ball up ahead in the pitch. He hasn't been able to do that last season because Kjaer has significantly regressed physically. And then Tomori's had to adjust with Malik Thiaw. And Malik Thiaw has obviously risen to the occasion. He has accepted and honed the new starting spot as his. Kalulu had a bit of an indifferent start to the season, couldn't really find his footing at centre-back, which is now completely owned by Thiaw. But there was a dynamic change. If we look at the numbers, and I wrote this article last week, which is available on Sempre Milan for those who want to read, I make an assessment of Tomori's performance as a centre-back in the Scudetto winning season and his performance last season. And there are two primary areas where he has significantly improved, one of which is in the aerial department. He has gotten much better in the air. And the other is making blocks. Both of these essentially are attributes you find typically in a covering defender, someone who plays a little deeper in the line of defense. And Tomori was quite appalling on both these fronts in the Scudetto winning season. The other attributes, which are, in terms of sort of interceptions, in terms of clearances, what defenders are expected to do further up the pitch, Tomori has significantly regressed there because he's had to double up between being a covering defender and a pressing defender. So there is the need for a very natural covering defender in the side. And with Malik Thiaw, of course, very unrefined, raw, he's going to have a lot of ups and downs, which is expected for a player of his age and experience. Milan need a player to step in and sort of almost lead the way, take on the mantle from Kia. Maybe not someone who's a veteran or somebody who's as seasoned as Kia, but somebody who has a considerable number of games in a leading league as experience, which can bring to the fore. And someone I can think of who's fallen off a cliff purely in terms of reputation rather than performance is Maxence Lacroix, who plays at Wolfsburg. He moved for a very small minor sum from Sochaux to Wolfsburg 3 seasons ago, and he's now got about 3 seasons of first team football at Wolfsburg. And this is a guy who's 6'3". He's a mountain of a man. He's he's a very traditional centre back in the sense that he's very calm on the ball. He's very composed. He likes to push defenders further away from the goal. He's very physical as a defender, and I think he'd make an exceptional partner to Tomori in the heart of defense. And guess what? He's only 23. He fits the age profile as well, and he has a contract which expires in a couple of years. So I think it's something that Milan should consider.
Are you advocating 2 centre back signings, one for Gabbia and one as a care replacement?
So I think Tomori and Chao have shown great amount of resilience in terms of game time. They can clock a lot of minutes on the pitch, and so I feel signing 2 centre backs might be overkill. I think Milan need to have 3 centre backs who between themselves can probably chip in with 85 to 90% of the games that Milan are going to play this season. And, Kia can come in, Kalulu can come in maybe during the cup games, during the odd game when Milan are playing a 17th or 16th place side, give some respite and rest to the main defenders. But if 3 central defenders can compete with one another and clock about 90 minutes of the overall game time that Milan can play, then I think we're good to go. I don't think Milan need to sign 2 central defenders. Invest significantly in a good central defender who's ready to hit the ground running, rather than sign somebody from Argentina or Greece who's going to be a project rather than a player with immediate productivity.
Yeah, I do agree. 19-year-old Konstantinos Kolirakis of PAOK. He played last year. Seems to be promising, but only a year at that. And Marco Pellegrino from Platense. He has an Italian passport. I would go for the Greek Kolirakis because he has already broken into the Greek national team. What do you think about the Deputy Theo position?
I personally think it's more of a nominal signing, which honestly, with the players that we currently have, I think if Florenzi stays fit, he can double up as a deputy left back. Of course, signing somebody who's a pure play left back would be a great asset. We could also look at the academy because this player is not going to get a lot of game time. I know there's a lot of heated opinion on letting go of Kirkes. But he was never going to be a deputy to Theo. So we know Theo is going to play a lot. He typically is within the top 3, top 5 players in terms of game time by the end of the season. He's going to clock a lot of minutes. So why don't we just have an auxiliary left back, an inverted left back like Florenzi, or maybe somebody like Bartasaghi who can come in and play when required, rather than make an investment in this front. I think there are other areas in the pitch where Milan need to make an investment. Like Sam rightly pointed out, the striker position is not going to come in cheap. And I have 2 names to throw into the hat. I think Mehdi Terini would be a good choice. I know he's 31, but his record in the Portuguese league is phenomenal. And another player often scoffed at is El Nassiri, who also scored in the UEFA Super Cup. So he always tends to score those big goals. He's only 26. So why not take a punt on him as well? It's just 2 names I'm just throwing into the hat as well.
Yeah, we have quite a few striker options, few centre back options, and seems like the club is looking at that. What we have not seen so far is a CDM, and I know a lot of Milan fans have been crying out for a CDM. Sam, where are you placed on the Rade Krunic situation? Do you think he deserves a pay hike and stay as a first team regular? Or do you think that whatever Milan can get out of a squad player who was still till last year probably a squad player, and let him go and buy somebody who is probably going to be a first team regular?
It's a tricky situation, because if you'd have asked me 3 months ago, when I was under the impression that Sandro Tonali would be continuing the club, then I'd have said, you know what, we can get away without Rade Krunic, and I'm happy to accept any sort of bid that comes in. But the tactical void that's been left by the transfer window up to this point has actually rendered Krunic somehow more valuable. He's gone from a squad player who fits a particular role, almost like he became like a Pioli victory cigar for a little bit. And he's actually become the most significant defensive midfielder in the team by quite a long way. And we discussed this on the last podcast. Outside of Krunic, none of the players that are currently in the midfield rotation, Milan, none of the players that Milan have brought in fit a traditional midfield destroyer role whose primary responsibility is to tackle, to break up play and push the ball forward. Only Krunic is possessed with those talents right now. Now, Musa could develop into that, but if you want to hang that the first season as a player for a 20-year-old to be like, yeah, cool, you're just going to be our defensive midfielder, figure it out as you go along, you're welcome to do that, but I'm not prepared to. So I would like to see the numbers and how much that would cripple Milan financially moving forward. But if he's actually been looking at it realistically, if you have to pay him a little bit more, his role has actually gone up with that. He's actually going to become our starting midfielder week in, week out. So if the pay hike almost reflects the promotion regardless, so it doesn't pain me as much. I don't like the idea of selling Krunic and being like, right, okay, we've got 9 days to figure out a replacement. So I personally would try and keep him. But if he's gone, and we're going to have to pivot. But if I was given the choice, I would like to keep him because he fills an important tactical role for the team.
Rajat, if you had to give into Rade Krunic's demand of going to Fenerbahce, who would you like in your first team?
There are 2 players that Milan are going to play against in the opening game day, Dominguez and Schouten. I mean, they're tailor-made for this position. And I think Milan going to progressively move towards playing a 4-3-3. I don't think Loftus-Cheek is a double pivot player. I don't think Reinders is a double pivot player. Musa could be a double pivot player, but the midfield profiles that Milan have signed do not imply a double pivot play in the center of the pitch. It's going to be a 3-man midfield, which pretty much necessitates the need for a number 6. And Krunic isn't that player. And I think his ability to play as a 6 gets accentuated, gets exaggerated, because nobody else can play in that position remotely as well. But if there is an opportunity to upgrade from Krunic, I'm happy to take that, because Krunic has maybe 2 years left on his contract, or more than that. He's not going to command the same fee next season. This could be the most realistic opportunity Milan have to sell him and to upgrade in his position, unless Milan choose to renew Krunic. And as Milan continue to improve as a team, as a squad, as they begin to raise their profile and ambition, both nationally and on the continent, Milan must move beyond players of Krunic's ilk and quality.
Well, I'm a old timer and a romantic, so I would like to. I mean, of course, Nicolas Dominguez, Jerry Shorten, both of them have Serie A credentials, but the guy that I would like to Milan to go for, and this is purely because Moncada has now a greater say, is Federico Redondo.
Oh yeah.
If we can land Federico Redondo, he has a Spanish passport. He was born in Milan, so if we can get Federico Redondo, I can say this much: that this guy will be twice the player that people think Enzo Fernandez is. He is currently rated as 4 million in transfer market. I would say maybe 3 times that value is needed to pry him out. Same like what Nicholas Dominguez or JD Shorten would have given. I would go for this guy and see how it pans out.
Why is he so heavily ignored? I mean, we're looking at a play. We're looking at the Premier League, for instance. We look at Chelsea, right? They're signing Caicedo and Lavia cumulatively for close to 200 million. It's already there.
Just whisper it. There are still 2 weeks remaining. Who knows who will pluck whom? A few days back, this new striker Velis was being, linked to Milan. Suddenly, Tottenham has picked him up. So it seems like teams or youngsters like to get themselves linked to Milan, and then that news spreads out, and then the scouts from the EPL pluck them up. Even though Milan may not be interested in them. In our entire transfer season discussion, we forgot about two guys who needs to move out. Marco Lazetic and Divock Origi. They too do not have any. I mean, all of us forgot that these two players are still there. I don't think they have any space here. So let's move on to the next portion, which is preview of the upcoming season. And again, let me start with Rajat. How do you see this Milan team, which effectively finished fifth? They didn't finish fourth, they finished fifth on the ground and then got to fourth because Juventus were fined those points. So a team which finished fifth with the kind of transfer season that they have had, continuing with the same manager, we do know that Maldini wanted a change in manager, but we have continued with Pioli. We've got a lot of new players in. What do you think this new season holds for Milan?
Well, Milan's obviously strengthened significantly from last season. I think the squad per se is better than the squad of last season. There are certain improvements, especially in attack. We've discussed at great length about the other departments and segments of the pitch and the squad. So in the last 5 seasons, or 3 of the last 5 seasons, the winner has breached the 90-point mark. And that's a significant number to cross. Only in 2 occasions has the winner not breached the 90-point mark. One of those times, Milan won the scudetto. And the other time when the winner did not cross the 90-point mark, the winner won by 1 point. This is when Juventus and Inter basically had a 1-point difference between each other. So do Milan have a squad to compete for the title? On paper, yes, but there are obviously a lot of practical reasons why I don't believe that's a possibility. One is, Napoli continue to be hands down the best team, if not the best squad in the country. And if they continue to have a very strong, undeterred injury record where players are not breaking down like last season, most of their players were available. Osimhen was largely available during the course of the season. Kvaratskhelia was available. Their key players were available. And of course, they made some very crucial signings this season to replace those who either left or who are leaving. I think they're still a team to beat. So something that hasn't happened in the history of Napoli, which is a repeat of the Scudetto. I expect that to happen. So I think Napoli is going to win. But where do Milan fare in comparison to that? I think there is psychologically and to a certain extent a sporting difference between Milan and Inter, where Inter edge that battle. I think Inter have objectively weakened with Onana leaving, Skriniar leaving, Brozovic leaving, and surprisingly, I still feel that on their day they would still beat Milan, and over the course of the season, that squad, that manager is built for domestic domination. and I feel like they will continue to play a very key role in terms of trying to vie for the title. Milan have been largely constructed as a European squad. Whether that approach is going to work in Serie A, whether that approach is going to work against low blocks in Serie A remains to be seen. A lot of the players have been brought in keeping in mind European style of play. So I expect Milan to actually do a lot better in Europe than in Italy. And for the squad to gel, to come together and to put results that are needed, I feel like that's going to happen towards the second half of the season, where Milan would most definitely finish in the top four, but I see them finishing third behind Napoli and Inter.
I agree with Rajesh with only a slight adjustment. I think Inter are going to win the title this year. I think we can't overstate the value of losing Walter Spalletti for Napoli, and how that's going to be how he was such a lightning rod for that team that has been oft talented and really on paper going into several Serie A seasons the better's favourite to do it. It's really between Sarri and Walter Mazzarri and then the Spalletti era. They were the dark horse favourites for the scudetto seemingly every year, and Spalletti was the coach to actually bring that together. The value that he brought to that side, and then just walking away, I think is going to have a knock-on effect. I also don't necessarily think. I think does lightning strike twice in a bottle with replacing Jay Kim, and they're going to bring in another defender who's going to just immediately slot in and do exactly the same thing? I don't think so. I think it's unlikely that they've just found another world-class centre-back to replace that. I think the pressure that's going to be placed on them to do that, I think it's going to be really, really tough. I think if I look at that Inter side, and yes, as Raj points out, there's Onana's a terrific loss. Krunic was a loss, and Brozovic is really going to make a difference to the way that they were able to press without the ball. But if I was an Inter fan, which obviously I'm not, I'd be saying, all right, Lukaku is the Lukaku exit and all that drama is actually addition by subtraction. There's a possibility that Lautaro Martinez and Thuram is one of the most exciting attacking duos in the league that we've seen in recent years. I think Fratesi was a good signing, and Inter spent the first 3 weeks of the transfer window waiting for what we did and just trying to nick it off us. And Fratesi was a Milan target for a significant portion of time. And we were all, Milan fans on Twitter especially, were excited to have him join us when we were leading the charge for that. And I think that's a good signing for Inter to get that in. I think that centre-back trio of Bastoni, Acerbi and Darmian is solid, unspectacular, but solid. And I think Jan Sommer will do a good job in goal. They've still got Barella. I think DeMarco and Dumfries are a good wide partnership. And I think that striking duo, I don't think it's like guaranteed, but there is a chance that like we're in October and Martinez and Thuram have combined for like 12 goals in 7 games or something like that. And they have a real exciting partnership that's really pushing Inter forward. And I don't rate Rudy Garcia. I'm just going to say it. I don't think he's going to. I think he's a title-winning coach at Serie A level. I think he was given everything he needed at Roma, and he messed that up. I'm just not convinced he's good enough to take that side. And there's also going to be following the most historic season since Diego Maradona was at Napoli, is a tough mental passage to overcome. There's still the lingering Victor Osimhen contract. And there's also just the possibility that Kvaratskhelia could just end up in the Premier League by late January as well. And I think all those pulling things apart, rather than making this the Napoli podcast, is going to make this a little bit difficult. On top of the fact that De Laurentiis is not exactly the most stable of owners. He could just sell on a whim. Like players, he could sell on a whim. He could get rid of guys. He could sack the coach. There's a propensity for chaos at Napoli that's higher than some of the others. Juventus were the third best team in Serie A if it wasn't for FIGC involvement. I think they're significantly weaker in 23-24 than they are in 22-23. I also think that keeping Allegri was probably a mistake. They need a new voice in there. They just kind of went for the status quo. So I think Milan's biggest Scudetto rivals are Inter and Napoli, and I think Inter is first. Then I think Napoli is second on the basis of Victor Osimhen firing them to the runner-up spot. And then I think Milan settling in third. And I think we are heading into one of the most interesting, and by interesting, I mean hilarious for me, Juventus seasons in a very long time, because I think there's a chance that Pogba plays 5 games. I think there's a chance that they try and sell Mihajlovic and bring in Lukaku, who's immediately rubbish or not good enough in comparison to Mihajlovic. I think there's a possibility that the players that they've brought in, that defence, Danilo and Alexandro, you ask a Juventus fan if they want Alexandro to start for them next season and then try and get them to stop talking after 5 or 6 minutes, it becomes a really difficult thing to actually achieve. I think the possibility that they want to start Pogba, but they're going to start Weston McKennie instead, is an absolutely tremendous drop-off, the likes of which none of us are actually looking forward to. Like, having Pogba and having to play Weston McKennie instead is a massive drop-off. I can't emphasise that enough. I think they're hoping that Mihajlovic takes a step forward, that Locatelli takes a step forward, that Moretti takes a step forward. I think they're hoping that Milik turns into a consistent striker. I think they're hoping that Chiesa can keep both of his legs intact for 9 months. There's a lot of if, buts and maybes, and I'm not convinced that Max Allegri is the coach that he has been in 5 years ago. So I think Juventus are fourth, but I think there's a real chance that we're like, what has happened to Juventus by Christmas as well? And that leaves the interesting Roman sides. Mourinho's going to have a good season with Roma. Like, he's put some smart signings in. They've spent almost no money and have seemingly improved. I think there's a really good chance that Renato Sanchez is a strong addition. I think obviously Milan fans have known who Hossein Aouar is because he's been linked to Milan seemingly every year since he came out of the womb. And I think he's going to be a smart signing for them too. So to summarise, I think Milan are a Champions League contender and a comfortable one at that. I don't think they are in the title race. I think it's like a clear 4 or 5 points away all the way through. I think Inter and then Napoli are the top two. And I think Juventus are possibly imploding by Christmas. And I think Roma will surprise them.
What do you think about Atalanta?
Gasperini with the toolkit of that attack at his disposal, that's a mouth-watering prospect. So even if Atalanta decide to open up the floodgates at the back and say, score as many as you want, I think they have the strike force, the attack to sort of outdo that in terms of, outscoring the opposition. And they, in my opinion, going to be, if not the best team in Serie A, probably the most entertaining team to watch. El Bilal Toure is obviously record signing for Atalanta. They spent close to 30 million euros on him, which is something which is typically unlike an Atalanta move. It's quite an expensive signing by their standards. And they've brought this boy on board who's 21, who's got the world at his feet. He's an incredibly talented forward. And of course, there's a shifting of the rear guard, of course, with Zapata moving on. But with Scamacca coming back in, surely with a point to prove after quite a regretful stint in England, I'm sure he's going to acclimatize very, very well to the Italian game once again. He's played in Serie A, he knows the defenders, he knows how to play in the league. And of course, there is a plethora of quality behind this strike force as well. Lookman was outstanding last season. I don't think anyone expected Lookman to have the kind of season that he did. And I have a feeling that our very own Charles de Ketelaere will also sit into this sort of mix very, very well. The only reason I don't have Atalanta in the top four is because I don't think you need to be the most entertaining team to win the league or to finish in the top four. We saw that with the teams of yore as well in Serie A, where you need to be tactically strong and sound. You need to be able to get the right results at the right time. And Atalanta is going to wash away most of the smaller and inferior opponents. But I feel against teams of similar stature, it's going to be more of a boxing match. And typically it's the heavier weights that win those games. So I expect Atalanta to finish in the next set of teams that qualify for European competitions, which is between 5th and 7th. And Sam touched upon the quality of signings that Roma have made. They've made signings that are also going to keep the doctors busy. Sanchez, for that matter, is going to. We don't know what version of Sanchez Roma are going to sign, or what version of Sanchez is going to play. Paredes, is he going to revisit his form from Roma 6 years ago when he was shaping up to become one of the best, deepest playmakers in the league. So which version of these players are they getting? And Houssem Aouar also has his own injury troubles, which he's dealt with. So they obviously have a very strong team on paper. Will this team come together to push the top four teams and contend for the Champions League spot? Remains to be the question. So I feel like Roma and Atalanta will fit in that bracket. I feel Lazio is going to slip out of the top four because they're going to be in the Champions League. They've made some impressive signings, of course, this season. Saxon has joined the club. Vella has joined the club. So they've made some very key additions to the squad, but I feel like they're just not deep enough to compete in 2 or 3 different competitions over the course of the season. And I wouldn't be surprised if Sarri decides to prioritize the Champions League. I would be surprised if they actually make it out of the Champions League group stages. But because of that stretching of the squad in the first half of the season, I feel they will fall off considerably behind the chasing pack, which is why I don't see them finishing in the top four next season. So Roma, Lazio, and Atalanta would form the next segment of clubs from 5th to 7th, in my opinion.
Okay, one quick question to both of you. You both said that Milan are going to be top 4 material, but not title challenger. What can Milan do in the next 2 weeks to become a title challenger?
That's a great question. I know that a lot of Milan Twitter would say Stefano Pioli is the replacement, but I disagree. He already has won a title, so I do think it's a bit overly negative to be like he's the difference between us and being Manchester City. It's tripe, to be honest. I agree he's got flaws, but he's a capable coach who has taken a young side to a title, and it has been done. So I think that Pioli wouldn't be my top priority. I don't want to repeat my rant from earlier, but if Milan had a striker up top who was capable of getting somewhere between 15 and 22 goals a season, that's the biggest difference any side can make is the addition of a consistent elite goal scoring option, because then the 0-0s become 1-0s and the 1-1s become 2-1s, and those tight situations that Milan have struggled with over the last 2 or 3 years, the amount of times we've watched them play against tough Sassuolo, Bologna, well-organised opponents, and I'm just waiting for them to struggle to break them down. And you can see how the game envelops, and you know that it's one of those things where it's become a frustrating event because of how often it happens, as well, the regularity that it occurs. And a top-class striker would make the difference. You only have to look at how Lukaku fired Inter to that title 3 years ago, how big of a difference that made to their entire squad during that particular year, to know the difference of that. If I don't know who that name could be, but you look at the difference that Osimhen as ascension made to Napoli. If Milan could bring in a player who was capable of getting 15 to 20 league goals, then they would immediately be a title contender, in my opinion.
Rajat, you agree on this?
I think Milan lacked balance in the first team. Like I said, summer mercato was designed to solve for depth. But what has unfortunately happened is there's a lack of balance in the squad, in the team, rather, in the first team, not in the squad, wherein the spine itself is a bit shaky. We spoke about the striker. The central defensive midfielder is very much a part of that spine, as is a centre back. And I feel that Milan are 2 to 3 signings away from being considered as favourites for the title. But what about you, Debo? What do you think? Where do you see Milan finishing in the top 4, and what do you think Milan need to finish as the champion?
Oh, I completely agree. I think we need a striker who along with Giroud will be giving us 20 plus goals. Even last year, even with Kvaratskhelia breakout season, it still needed phenomenal performance from Osimhen for Napoli to win. Otherwise, just Kvara would not have done it. Of course, Rafael Leao might be choosing 23-24 as a season where he wins the Ballon d'Or. So we may not need a number 9 in that case. Who knows? I'm not totally sold on Pioli's strategies and tactics. I think he did reasonably well. I mean, I would say more than well by winning that scudetto out of turn, in sense that we really did not expect to win it in the second year itself, maybe in the third or fourth year. But I don't think he can take it to the position that we all desire, which is a European position. Um, so he can give us that. If he can give us that second star, I would be really thinking that he will have a position in our club's history. Um, I think more than the striker position, I would go with the adage that while goals win you matches, defense wins you leagues titles. So we need a really mean defense. We need a defensive midfielder, one or two maybe defensive midfielders, and a manager who would be able to wring the maximum out of Liao, out of Chukwueze, out of a 37-year-old Giro. First up, Rajat, your top four.
Napoli, Inter, kind of interchangeable at this point in time, 1 and 2. Milan and Juventus.
Sam,
Inter, Napoli, Milan, Juventus.
my top four is Juventus, then Milan, then Lazio, then Napoli. Fairly because last year was probably the worst that for any team that could have been there, and still Juventus finished third. I feel that Allegri and Conte are born for leagues, and this year they do not play anything else, so I feel that they can take that. 5, 6, and 7, Rajat.
Roma, Lazio, and Atalanta.
Sam.
He stole it. Roma, Lazio, Atalanta. He's absolutely right. That's I'm
Yeah,
muttering under
so-
my breath. That's the best call.
Yeah, so for me it would be Atalanta, Fiorentina, and I put Lazio in top four. Roma will crash and burn, and Mourinho will be sacked. That's the prediction. Okay, Rajat, who will be the breakout star of this Serie A?
I mentioned him earlier, El Bilal Toure. I think I'm very excited for what he can do in the league.
Sam?
Marcus Thuram for Inter, unfortunately. I'm a huge fan of his, so I'm going to express personal bias.
I would go, if Napoli can pull it out, then Vega, the midfielder, if they can pull it out, pull it off. And the other guy is, it's a tie for me. Other guy is Fiorentina striker Beltran.
Yeah.
I think he is a finished article. He came for 20 million from River Plate. I think this guy will be really good. The transfer dud.
Well, I have an answer, and this might seem provocative, but I think it's going to be Marcus Thuram. I think he's.
There was no need for
that. I have my reservations on the quality of player that he is. I think there's a lot of hype which naturally comes with that surname. And with him joining Inter and Inter not being able to sign Lukaku, the pressure just sort of doubles up on him. His numbers for somebody in his mid-20s and what his track record has been so far isn't especially impressive. I think people are still waiting for him to come into the player that people think he is. So I would say Marcus Thuram, purely because of the hype and the expectation that's been built around him.
Sam, up to you.
How dare you? How dare you? I'm gonna try and think a little bit outside the box. I think the worst signing of the summer is Rudy Garcia. Replacing a title-winning coach. That's gonna come to the end of the Napoli situation.
Yeah. For me, I would say again, I mean it's a loaded statement, but I think Christian Pulisic. First of all, I don't think he deserves to be starter over Chukwueze. Second of all, if for 20 million, I don't think he'll be worth it. We'll be trying to offload him in 6 months' time. Who will be the Coppa Italia winners? I don't know. I mean, does it matter?
I think I'm going to trust in Jose Mourinho's cup winning ability. I think that's the safest bet. So that's why I'm saying that first. I'm going to go Roma.
I'll again go for Juventus because they do not play anywhere else, and somehow they manage this domestic front really well.
So I think the team that lost the final last year will be the winner this year, or at least that's the team
Fiorentina.
I want to see winning the Coppa Italia. I'm a huge fan of Italiano. I like what he does. I like his ideas. I think he's a very good, nice team at his disposal, and I feel like they came very, very close to winning it last year.
Who would be the surprise team of this season? It can be a positive way, it can be a negative way.
Sassuolo would be the surprise team. I think this season they're going to be below average, considerably below average.
I'm going to go with the Thiago Motta effect at Bologna. That appears to be the trendy hipster pick of Serie A at the moment. But he's doing a very good job. And if they keep a hold of the couple of midfielders that Milan have been linked to, then that's a strong team pushing.
I would put Fiorentina. I've already put Fiorentina in the top 7. So I think Fiorentina would be that team. Yeah, so I think those were the rapid fire kind of thoughts that I had. The season opener is in 2-3 days time whenever this goes to air. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me yet again. I think it's been a really good second episode. Follow me on Twitter. I will never call it X at Sam Calcio, and I look forward to shouting at you, gentlemen, over the course of the season as we move forward.
Yeah, truly enjoyed recording this episode, and looking forward to a blistering season ahead. I'm very excited for what Milan have in store for us, even if it's going to be a lot of drama and emotion. We at least know it's not going to be devoid of goals. Looking forward to discussing more on Milan. You can find me at Rajat Kumar on X or Twitter, whichever you prefer to call it. And you can obviously follow us, the podcast on Twitter as well, at Milan Podcast.
And I am at the rate Rossoneri. And hopefully the next time we come to talk to you, Giroud would have backed a couple of hat tricks with assists from Leao and Chukwueze. Thank you. Thank you.